Welcome. It's hashtag Webinar Wednesday. My name is Doug Seserman. I'm privileged to serve as the CEO of Americans for Ben-Gurion University. And today we are joined by the president of Ben-Gurion University, Professor Daniel Chamovitz, for a webinar we've entitled, "What is a Fifth Wave University and How Will It Lead Israel Forward?" But before getting into the topic today, it's important to just put today's webinar in context. David Ben-Gurion, Israel's founder and first prime minister, said that the future of Israel would emerge from the Negev, and today we're going to talk about how Ben-Gurion University of the Negev is so key to that future. He also said that it is in the Negev that the Jewish people will be tested, and how prophetic a statement that is now in the aftermath of October 7th. Unfortunately, the Ben-Gurion University community has been directly and disproportionately impacted. And over the last 2 days, we've lost two more of our family members. We now have 113 dead, including Negev, who was an alum of Ben-Gurion University from Kibbutz Nirim. And just overnight, we lost Staff Sergeant and student Neria Cohen. May their memories be for a blessing. Okay, so Danny, let's get into this program. I also want to thank the A4BGU staff, Lenore Levine, Cheryl Korlitz, and Blair Kahana for all your work behind the scenes. For some of you, you know Danny already. Professor Daniel Chamovitz is the 7th president of Ben-Gurion University of the Negev, and he's distinguished in many ways. One of them being he's the only university president in Israel who wasn't born there, who actually made Aliyah and chose to live in the country. We're proud of the work that he's done, both before October 7th, but since, being one of the most prominent spokespeople for the state of Israel. He's also begins in July the term to chair all of the university presidents, the Association of all the university presidents. He's a plant biologist and scientist by nature. He wrote a very popular book called What a Plant Knows that's been, I think, produced in something like 19 languages. But we'll have to talk about that another day. He's from Aliquippa, Pennsylvania. So he has a strangely very American accent. He's also a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Welcome, Danny.
Thanks a lot, Doug.
Okay, so audience, this is how today's webinar is going to work. Danny's going to make a couple of comments and teach us about what is a fifth wave university and reference Professor Michael Crow from Arizona State University, who Danny just bestowed an honorary doctorate on, and what the concept of a fifth wave university has to do with the future of Israel. If you have questions, just click on the Q&A function and we'll feed those to Danny as he's speaking, and also he'll leave some time at the end. So Danny, tell us about a fifth wave university.
Sure, thanks, Doug. And it's great to see, first of all, I see names of a lot of friends, but it's also see a lot of names that I don't know, which is always a pleasure. I just want to preface with two things. Everything we do at Ben-Gurion University, we have to remember that our student, Noah Argamani, who should be a third-year computer science student, computer engineering student this year, is still held somewhere underground in Gaza, along with her boyfriend, Avinatan, who is one of our alumni, and another one of our alumni, Sasha. So we have 3 Ben-Gurion University students or alumni who are still being held hostage. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure that they come home now, as we say in Hebrew. And I hope you all are doing everything you can to make sure that that happens. On the other side of the spectrum, I just, with a very, on celebration, Major Professor Dr. Nir Schlesinger, who's a professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering, 2 days ago was awarded the very prestigious Krill Prize for young untenured faculty in Israel. He's one of 10 who received this prize. And this is amazing because Nir, who studies machine learning, also has been in reserve duty almost constantly since October 7th. And he goes back and forth from his unit in Gaza to Ben-Gurion University, where he's teaching. You may have seen pictures of him teaching with his M16 over his shoulder. So I think good things are happening also. So let's talk about universities in general. I don't know how much you've actually given to a thought that universities, which are really slow evolving entities, though are evolving entities, that what we see now as a university is completely different than what a university was 200, 400, even 500 years ago. And so Michael Crow has divided universities into 5 waves of evolution. And the first wave, which may have started in Athens and went all through the Oxford and Cambridge, and then through to the early American universities like Harvard and Columbia College and Oberlin, were these Greek academies where teachers, professors, and students would gather to discuss, read great books, and eventually get a doctor of philosophy because they were all thinkers. If you look at the symbol of Yale, for example, there's Hebrew in it, veritas, Urim Utamim, that there's Latin and Hebrew. In many of these colleges, you had to know Latin, Greek, and Hebrew in order to get a degree. They're very elite, and they were the prototype of today's American, let's say, residential liberal arts colleges. It's interesting to know that one of the first strikes in American academia was that in the early 1700s, the Harvard faculty went on strike because the president had this completely revolutionary idea to have departments. What we take for granted, that universities are divided into faculties and schools and departments, until the early 18th century, there were no departments. There was just higher education. The second wave then came about after the American Revolution. And this is when we started having teachers' colleges, because there was a need for teachers in the growing American Republic. There were public colleges founded like Penn State and the University of Georgia, some technical colleges, a lot of small community colleges, to start training this slowly growing American republic and the population. And this is distinct from what was going on in Europe, where there were the classic research colleges for hundreds and hundreds of years. And then after the Second World War, there was a real revolution in higher education. And this is with the founding of the land grant colleges. I'm sure many of you are graduates of the land grant colleges. You know, University of Illinois, Penn State, some of the Penn State became a land grant college, Cornell, Michigan State University, University of Arizona, Texas A&M. These were the colleges, the universities that were founded to train people primarily in engineering and in agriculture, as there was such a need for these professions. And it also had more of an egalitarian access to higher education. Interestingly, alongside of that, the historically Black colleges like Grambling were founded to provide education to the African American community who were excluded from the land grant colleges around the United States. It's important to remember that throughout this time, all of the major research universities were in Europe. These the American higher education system was based on education. And then at the end of the 19th century, several philanthropists founded America's first research-based universities. This was not Harvard or Columbia, but this was Johns Hopkins University, Stanford University, and the University of Chicago. These were research-based with advanced degrees, and very quickly, a number of the first, second, and third wave universities then joined this fourth wave and evolved into major research universities, and of course, among them, the Ivy League universities. Important to remember that what we think as Harvard and Yale and Columbia as these massive research entities, it's only 150 years old that they've been doing research. Actually, in the United States, you couldn't get a PhD, I think, until 150 years ago. You had to go to Europe in order to get a PhD. So then what is a fifth wave university? So these first four universities, while there could be some egalitarian parts of them, they are, to a certain extent, ivory towers, either of education or of research. And the idea of a fifth wave university, and Arizona State is the best example, which has done this consciously, is how can, on the one hand, we scale what we do to reach as many people as possible and have a world-class enterprise in research and influence our community, to understand that we are within our community and we have to take responsibility for it. Now, if you look at Arizona State University, which 22 years ago, many of you would have probably known that it was America's premier party campus. You wouldn't have thought of it as one of America's top research universities. But over the past 22 years, Arizona State has embraced this new ideology. It has over 100,000 students now. It's combined both online learning with in-class learning, with accessibility. And as Michael Crow said, we measure our success by the level of our graduates, not by the level of the SAT scores of who's accepted to the university. It's a really unique take on higher education, which goes completely against what the elite universities, or so-called elite universities of America, go for. But at the same time, Arizona State University is taking responsibility for its greater community, whether that be in educating the Navajo or the other Native American communities of Arizona, in building a technological infrastructure in and around Phoenix, or influencing the education system or the medical system of the state. Now, in talking with Michael, I realized, and in reading his book called The Fifth Wave, that Ben-Gurion University, from its outset, has always been a fifth wave university. We just never knew how to describe it as such. What do I mean? Why would I consider ourselves a fifth wave university? If we go back 54 years, Ben-Gurion University is the only university in Israel that was formed by a governmental decree, because David Ben-Gurion and Aaron Yadlin, who was his Minister of Education, who was many of you knew on the board of Ben-Gurion University, understood the importance of higher education for the development of the Negev, Israel's most challenged geographical area. If we go back to Ben-Gurion's famous sentence that you may consider me a madman, or you may consider me some type of madman, but I envision a Hebrew Oxford in the Negev, a modern Yavne. Now, when David Ben-Gurion said this in 1963, there were more camels in Beersheba than there were people. If you look at Ben-Gurion University today, with next year, we're going to have probably over 19,000 students. You know, who could have imagined that Ben-Gurion University could have grown in that way? But now let's think, what is the role of our university? And when I say that we're a fifth wave university, what does that mean? And what does this mean, especially in the wake of October 7th? So there is no doubt that the first leg that Ben-Gurion University has to stand on is academic research excellence. We are one of 8 publicly funded research universities in Israel. Our mandate is to educate the next generation and to do world-class research. And you've heard probably tens of seminars about the incredible research coming out of Ben-Gurion University. When I became president 5.5 years ago, in my opening address, the State of the University address to the university, in my opening address to A4BGU when I visited, I think in Las Vegas, I talked about that we have to recommit ourselves to research excellence, meaning we cannot confuse the role of a university with that of an NGO, a non-governmental organization. The role of the university is not to go into the poor neighborhoods of Beersheba and paint the walls and make sure that there's good housing conditions for the old people in these poor neighborhoods. It's much cheaper to run an NGO than it is to run a university. And so that if we concentrate on being the best research university that we can be, giving the best education, of course, the trickle down will be into the neighborhoods around Ben-Gurion University, throughout Beersheba and throughout the Negev. But the attacks of October 7th have called us to rethink this statement of our mission. As many of you know, we found ourselves on October 8th in a vacuum. We found ourselves in a vacuum where the government wasn't functioning. This is not a political statement. This is just a statement of fact. And that the university had to fill this vacuum. We did this in our school, in our campus in Eilat, where we founded 2 schools for the children who survived the massacres of the kibbutzim so they could go back to school. We did that on our campus in Sde Boker, where we opened up our dormitories to the medical staff and to the military staff who needed a place to stay. We did it at our Marcus campus, where we opened up distribution centers for food and toiletries and toys for all of the displaced people and for the reservist soldiers. But more than that, we doubled the number of students in our medical school so that there will be more doctors in the South. We've developed a new program in social work so that we can double the output of social workers to deal with the tragedies and the trauma that's needed to deal with the populations of the South. And this made us realize that Ben-Gurion University is, on the one hand, one of Israel's premier research universities. On the other hand, though, we are also have a deep responsibility for the Negev. But these 2 things are not in contradiction to each other. Rather, they build off each other. So if we take, for example, our School of Education. Our School of Education not only educates the teachers who will be teaching the young generations of the Negev, so whatever the quality of the education we give them trickles down, our students do their internships in the Negev, supervised by our graduate students who do research on the methodology in the schools, and therefore we're increasing our knowledge pool at the same time. This isn't impact on the Negev against research and academic excellence. It's the 2 going hand in hand. When we opened up the Department of Occupational Therapy, the first one in the Negev in January, it was based on having a world-class occupational therapy department in order to serve the populations of the Negev. And so moving forward, everything that we do, we have to be asking ourselves, how does our activity affect our community? This doesn't make us an NGO. This emphasizes our role as a 5th wave university. The only thing we can't do that Michael Crow's vision of a 5th wave university is go on scale, because we're limited by the Council of Higher Education in Israel. Even if I want to have 100,000 students online, we're not allowed to do that. But that's a whole nother webinar. I
Maybe
think
Danny,
this might be a great time to, yeah, Doug, for questions.
Yeah, so for the audience, and we've got a couple questions building right now, just click on the Q&A function. Danny, that was amazing. And thank you for clarifying and teaching us about Fifth Wave University. You've talked before about the relationship between BGU and the Negev. We're the region's largest employer. Could you just comment a little bit? I think you hit it spot on. We were Israel's Fifth Wave University on October 6th. Obviously, what happened on October 7th happened, and in the future for the recovery and rebuilding. But can you rebuild the Negev without a strong Ben-Gurion University?
No, it's one of our challenges right now in the rebuilding of the Negev. If anyone's heard of Tkuma, which means rebirth, is making people realize that yes, we have to rebuild the houses in Beri and in Nir Oz physically, but by investing in Ben-Gurion University, by helping us leverage our strengths, we make the Negev that much stronger. If you look at the fact that Ben-Gurion University, together with Soroka University, our university hospital at Soroka, we're the largest employer. And we're the graduates of most of the engineers in the Negev. If we just, another example of us as a fifth wave university is our advanced technologies park. In most places in the world, a university doesn't have to invest in an advanced technologies park because private investors will build it because they want to make money. A university may invest in it as an investment, but they're not doing it in order to affect society. 10 years ago, when we opened our advanced technologies park adjacent to Ben-Gurion University, no one believed it could be successful. We built it with the municipality because no one else was going to do it. And now there are 5 buildings, 3,000 engineers, 70% are our graduates who have elected to stay in the Negev and not move to the center and north of the country. Building number 6 will be finished by the end of this year. Building number 7 soon. You know, that's another way of us taking responsibility for the Negev. I'll be very happy that we don't have to build the next industrial park.
Danny, you started your academic career at Columbia University, and then you transferred to Hebrew U, where you then received ultimately your PhD before doing your postdoc back in the States at Yale. We're getting a question from David Levine about, could you just comment on what you're seeing at American universities with the encampments and how you've handled a diverse student body at Ben-Gurion University?
Thanks, Doug. I first want to emphasize that the vast majority of American universities are fine. The whole world is not against us. There was I'll give you an example from this week. On Sunday night, an encampment was built in Pittsburgh, in Squirrel Hill, at the University of Pittsburgh. And by Tuesday, it was down. Because of the incredible functioning of the president, Joan Gable of the University of Pittsburgh. Same thing at Arizona State University. So it's not that everyone is out to get us, and we need to remember that. There has been, I think if we look at where things have gotten out of control, we will see in most cases, it's been in elite universities and in so-called elite universities, and in so-called elite universities where they had very little academic leadership or experience in academic leadership. There are some noted exceptions there, of course. As Michael Crow said itself, you know, he quoted from Roosevelt, 1941, when he gave his famous speech, "Why We Fight." Why is it worth it for Americans to sacrifice their lives? And it was for 4 freedoms. The first freedom is protected in the Constitution. It's the freedom of religion. Second freedom is protecting the Constitution. It's the freedom of speech. The third freedom is the freedom from want. People should not be hungry. People should not be homeless. And the fourth freedom is the freedom from fear. People should not be afraid. And if someone's free speech impinges on someone's freedom from fear on a college campus, it doesn't have to be allowed. You can go do that somewhere else. It sounds so clear, but when you take a strong moral stand, then your action that comes out of it is also very clear.
Very good. Could you talk a little bit about the diversity on campus at BGU, the Arab student population, the Bedouins in particular, and during this conflict, how have you managed the student body?
As a fifth wave university, and then here again, I'll compare myself to Arizona State University. Michael told me in a conversation about these incredible programs they have for Native Americans, some of who study online, and they have absolutely no electricity or they don't have any internet access. And so they provided them with hotspots and ways of connecting to the internet to do their classes in computer science. We found ourselves during COVID in a similar situation where many of our Bedouin Arab students couldn't access the university. And so we handed out tablets, laptops, and internet contact points so that they could do their degrees during COVID. About 15 years ago, there were only about 60 Bedouin students at Ben-Gurion University. And today we have over 600. So this is taking responsibility for our environment. The reason that the Bedouin community is Israel's most disadvantaged socioeconomic community is because of them a completely hideous school system. Now, the fact that the school systems are awful is not my responsibility. And every town thinks that the university should come in and provide high schools and their teachers. But on the other hand, I can't turn a blind eye to that. I can't turn my back on that. And so the question is, what does Ben-Gurion University do to assure that, one, Bedouin students can be accepted to Ben-Gurion University, but even more importantly, that they will graduate Ben-Gurion University? And so we've developed a number of programs, both preparatory programs that are specific for the Bedouin population and programs during their first and second years to make sure that they reach the level needed to let them go on and graduate. That's being a fifth wave university. If you would be accepting them just based on their SAT scores, they would never be accepted. I guess it's sort of like Pell Grant students to a certain extent in the United States. And for me, this is incredibly poignant and personal. Because yes, you said I went to Columbia University, but what you didn't say is that I got accepted on affirmative action to Columbia University. That when I was accepted to Columbia University, my SAT scores were in the bottom 10% of the incoming class, and I was forced to take remedial English. And this is only because I'm coming from Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, whose school system wasn't so great. And actually, my grade point average first semester was 2.1. Nothing I'm incredibly proud of, but it didn't keep me from eventually becoming president of Ben-Gurion University. So we have to be able to identify that potential and to make sure that it succeeds.
Well, we're very happy that Columbia University accepted you on affirmative action back then. All right, Danny, we called this webinar for 30 minutes. We've hit that mark. Our audience is still here strong. So the prerogative of the moderator is going to be to just go a little bit longer and then we'll...
Okay, but just a little bit, because from here, I'm going out to a demonstration to bring the hostages home. And that's important.
So I think you've covered this. We got a question from board member Joel Shalowitz. around what distinguishes BGU as a fifth wave university.
So
Is it really Israel's only fifth wave university in your mind?
when Hebrew University was founded, it was clearly a fifth wave university. And when the Technion was founded, it was in its own way a fifth wave university. It built the country. But they both have evolved into, I would call them, global universities. And they're fabulous universities. But I'll use the example of Tel Aviv University, where I come from, before I came to Ben-Gurion University. If you would cut Tel Aviv University out of Tel Aviv, out of Ramat Aviv, one of the richest neighborhoods in Israel, and move it to to Palo Alto, okay, or to San Francisco, what would be the effect on the Tel Aviv ecosystem or on the Israeli ecosystem? In the end, I asked this to someone very big in the Israeli economy, and he said it would be zero. And the truth of the matter is, many of the professors at Tel Aviv University wouldn't even know that they were no longer in Tel Aviv when you moved them to San Francisco. But if you do the same thing for Ben-Gurion University and you cut us out and move us to, say, Phoenix, Arizona, the entire Negev falls apart. Whether we like it or not, that's a massive responsibility, and we can't ignore it.
Okay, last question, and this can also be your closing comment.
Sure.
So a great university like Ben-Gurion University needs a forward-looking campaign, right? A vision for the future. And we happen to be launching a campaign called Way Forward. Tell us what that $1 billion effort means to you and why it's so important now on the other side of October 7th.
Two things I want to say. I think we're in a really interesting moment in global Jewish philanthropy. And I'll connect this to Columbia for a second. Many of you may have read that a Columbia alumnus changed his will and left his entire estate of $250 million to another B university, Bar Ilan University. Someone wrote me a letter saying congratulations. They thought Bar Ilan was Ben-Gurion, which is, I
think that was congratulations because you're becoming the chair of all the university presidents.
Right. And we've seen also in Haifa University just got a very, very large donation also for their medical school, that people around the world are starting to realize, why should I be giving my millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions to Columbia or to Harvard or to UCLA when I could be building Israel as academia? And when we look at why we're in the middle of this $1 billion campaign and we're already over a third of the way there, is because Ben-Gurion University physically was actually quite small. We're one of the smallest campuses in Israel. I don't think anyone could have ever imagined that Ben-Gurion University would have gotten to this size of 18,000 students. Now, add to that the IDF is moving its bases, its chief technological bases, adjacent to the university. And just this week, we were told that the computing unit of the IDF is going to be sending their soldiers to get their degrees at Ben-Gurion University. This has necessitated us to double the size of the university. When we're looking at we're building a new faculty of computer science. The old buildings that we have, which are built in the 1970s, just are not built for modern technological research. And it's actually cheaper to build new buildings than to renovate the old ones. We're building a building of quantum technologies. We don't even have the capabilities in our current campus to do that. We need more classrooms, and we're building a cultural center in the North Campus. This is also going to enable us to bring, actually, I forgot to bring world-class Jewish and Israeli academics back from the United States. Just today, I was in contact with a incredibly senior researcher in business and social work from a university that I can't mention, but one of the top 10 universities, who wants a position specifically at Ben-Gurion University, but it's going to cost me $1.5 million to bring her. So how do we want to bring people back from the United States? We need the campaign to do that. There's another professor from UCLA who has just moved to Germany to one of the premier research institutes in Germany, and he now wants to bring his 365 publications to Ben-Gurion University in quantum physics, one of the world leaders in quantum physics. That's going to cost me $6 million to bring him. Do we want that type of person? Is it good to bring Jews and Israelis back from the United States to Israel? I think, yeah, but they're used to American standards of research and not the ones we have right now. So to build the North Campus and to bring back these incredible talent to Israel so that we have another Nobel Prize winner. That's why we do it. And I have to imagine that in this wave of massive giving, it was started by Ben-Gurion University. We need to remember that. First, there was the $500 million of the Marcuses. And then on December 1st, there was the $100 million of Sylvan Adams. And since then, most universities in Israel have had these 9-figure gifts, but it's all because of us, of course.
Well, it takes a village, and all the universities in Israel are important, and they do great work. Right. Of course, at Ben-Gurion University, we know under your leadership that we're the future. So the Way Forward campaign is kind of a triple entendre: the way forward for the university, the Negev, and especially now in the aftermath of October 7th, the way forward for Israel. Danny, any last comments, or we're going to wrap it up?
No, I mean, I'm just incredible. I mean, we're coming off of our Board of Governors meeting, which many of you were at, which was one of the most emotionally satisfying events of my life. And for those of you who have never visited Ben-Gurion University, those of you who've been to Israel but sort of never go south of Tel Aviv, or you bypass Ben-Gurion University on your way to Eilat, come visit us. It basically needs to be seen to be believed.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are looking for something to do in the United States, September 22nd to the 24th, we are going to be hosting our annual meeting in New York City. So please join us. It's for our board of directors, but also other people are invited to participate. And on Sunday night, September 22nd at 6 p.m., I think we have a slide, we are going to be hosting our annual New York benefit, this year called One Day, featuring a special surprise musical performance. So you're going to have to stay tuned for that announcement. And importantly, honoring our outgoing board chair, Gary DeBode, for his 4 years of service to A4BGU and Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. So please join us in New York, September 22nd at 6 p.m. David Ben-Gurion, the founder and first prime minister, had lots of quotes, but one of my favorite is that he said, "Words without deeds are nothing. One must show way by example." And Danny, we want to thank you for the example that you make by leading us, by being a light for Ben-Gurion University of the Negev, and being really a beacon, a migdalor, that emanates from the Negev desert for the revitalization, recovery, rebuilding of Israel. Thank you for joining us. Everybody, stay safe and be healthy.
Thank you.